I don't think that anyone should ever pick one era and buy all the furniture from that era. That makes your house a time capsule and it doesn't make a house a home. What you should do is find the best of all the eras, find what you like about different eras, and find a way for them to live together in harmony in your house. The furniture that's in the home that you live in is really important. It becomes this background to the memories of your childhood. When I was a kid, I can still remember the antique wallpaper in my bedroom, and I can remember the paintings my mom put on the wall, and I remember the antique dresser that we had and the antique couch my mom had. In this chapter, we're going to talk about different vintage eras and styles. When we say vintage, we mean something that is over 26 years old and it has a style that's connected to a particular era and time. An antique, on the other hand, is something that's 100 years old or more. I'm going to teach you how to tell if something is 100 years old or more and is an antique. And we're going to go through 3 different design eras: Art Deco, mid-century modern, and postmodern. After we're done with this chapter, you'll be able to spot the defining characteristics of each of these eras, and then we're gonna go through how to style all the different eras together in one space. Let's get started with antiques. Most antiques were made before the Industrial Revolution, so if you find something that has imperfections and looks like it's handmade, that tells you that it's an antique piece. This is a parlor table. First thing I notice is how heavy it is. When I lift it up, it's really heavy, and that's indicative of age because it means it's made out of higher quality material. The second thing I notice is the bottom. This is called a ball and claw foot that you put on a table. It's from the Victorian era, and there have been a lot of reproductions of this, but I can tell that this one is old because it's made of solid brass that has lots of patina on it, and it's made out of real glass. So that's another indication that it's old to me. When I look at the legs of this table, I can see that each one of the grooves is slightly different size than the other ones in each of the legs, which tells me that these are hand-turned legs. Patina is also really important when you're looking for antiques. Patina doesn't mean that it's broken or worn. It means that it has worn beautifully over time. Let's say you've lifted it and you can see that it's heavy. What's the next step to inspect something that you find in the wild? Always turn it over. So most new pieces and newer vintage pieces have a label on the underside, whether it's a table or a chair or a piece of pottery. This doesn't have any label at all, which again indicates to me that it's probably an antique. If you see a printed label, then you know that it was made with a machine when they made the label, so you know that it's probably not 100 years old. I can see signs of green paint, which is really beautiful, which means that it was probably painted green at some time and somebody had stripped it since then. I don't see any other markings besides just little pencil markings. The carpenter probably tried to put the legs first, but didn't. So, just more indicators that it was a handmade piece. Another really easy clue to look for is the type of screws that were used. Let me show you what I mean. This is a new screw. It is a Phillips head screw. It has the little cross, and I can tell it was machine made because it's perfect. There's no imperfections on it. So if I see a Phillips head screw like this on a piece of furniture, then I can guess that it's probably not antique. In contrast, this piece has not only these old screws, but it has very old, tiny little nails that somebody hand nailed into this wood block. So if you're out shopping for a piece of furniture and you want to know if it's antique and it feels heavy, you see lots of beautiful aged patina like this. You see flathead screws or old nails, and you see real solid materials like solid brass or these glass balls that have imperfections and bubbles in them, then you can probably guess that it's an antique piece too. Okay, let's move on to our first and oldest of the vintage eras, Art Deco. So this is a good example of Art Deco style. Art Deco style is all about geometric forms, modern materials like brass, mirror, glass, and things that are really glamorous. It was from the Roaring 20s and the 30s. Think the Chrysler Building and Great Gatsby. The first thing that stood out to me about this lamp is the mix of materials, which is very Art Deco. There's glass, there's brass mixed in with mirror, and then there's a lucite base and lots of gold. It's definitely glamorous, it's overskilled and large, and it has these symmetrical lines to it. When I bought it, it didn't have a shade on it, which is totally fine. I would never, don't be intimidated if you find a lamp that doesn't have a shade, or even if it has a broken shade. You can always fix the shade. You can always get a different shade. But the lamp itself, if it's a good quality lamp, is worth buying regardless of a shade. So if you're shopping and you see something that looks straight out of The Great Gatsby and it has geometric patterns, clean lines, glamorous materials, and it has indications of age, you will know that it's an Art Deco piece and that it is a vintage piece. Next, let's move on to mid-century modern. Mid-century modern was from the 1940s and 1950s, an American style of vintage furniture. It's all about streamlined shapes, organic shapes like this curve, modern materials. This table is steel base and a marble top. Think Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Waterhouse and an egg chair. Let me show you an example of a true mid-century modern vintage piece. Okay, the first thing that I notice about this table is that it's definitely a mid-century modern design. I can tell because of these tapered legs in the front. That's an iconic part of mid-century design, are these tapered legs. Because they're squared off, I know they're later mid-century, probably late 60s and 70s. So since I don't recognize it as a brand that I know, the first thing I do is look underneath it and see if I can find a label. So we'll do that now. Ooh, it's very heavy. It passes the heaviness test, which tells me that it's made of high quality materials, again, if it's heavy. And, okay, I see a label right under there. It says Lane, it's a wood burning label. It says Lane Manufacturing, which is a very high quality furniture maker, and it's definitely an authentic mid-century modern piece. All right, let's turn it back over. Okay, so I love the style of this piece. It has these wood inlays of contrasting type of wood. It has the wood grain that goes all the way across. You can see that this was one solid piece of wood, and then they cut inlays right here as a beautiful design. So not only was it one solid piece, then they perfectly cut out a shape and then inserted a new piece of wood right there. So it's a way to add interest without adding pomp and circumstance that a traditional piece would have. It doesn't have the carvings and the flair. It's just very subtle, beautiful details, which is very iconic of mid-century modern style. So let's move on to the next era of design, which is not understated at all, postmodern. It's quite a contrast to mid-century modern design, which was all about being understated. And postmodern is about breaking the rules just for the sake of breaking the rules. It still uses man-made materials, it's forward-thinking, and that's why it's modern. You'll see a lot of chrome, concrete, brass, lucite. The only reason that they break the rules is to break the rules, and the next piece after that is trying to break the rules of the next piece before that. So that's why postmodern can be really fun. It started in, I would say, the 1970s and went through the 90s. I think that if you watch a lot of old 1990s TV shows, you'll get a good idea of what postmodernism is. And you'll see bright primary colors, maybe neon colors, you'll see man-made materials, and you'll see something that's almost like a mockery of traditional design. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This chair is a great example of really good postmodern design. You can see how it's a mockery of traditional design. What I mean when I say that, how you can imagine an old cane chair. This is cane in a lucite block, and it might look like your grandma's chair. You might like have a hint of your grandma's house with this cane, but then they put it in this ultra skinny, underscaled lucite block right in the back of this chair. And then you'll see the bright primary colors like this blue suede seat. And if you look at the back, the lines are very modern. It has swooping lines, organic shapes. It uses man-made materials like the chrome. And then for no reason at all, it just sits on these wooden balls in the back, which is very postmodern, just to do something for no reason at all, except that it's fun and that it's different. It's different for the sake of being different. And in this case, it all blends together in a really fun, interesting design. And these are the kind of postmodern things that I get really excited about. There are beautiful things in each era of vintage. You do not have to be confined to one, and one is not better than the other. In fact, I think through the contrast of the different eras, you can see what's great about each piece of furniture. In my home, I like to take a little bit from every different vintage design era and antiques and new furniture and mix them all together. It might be intimidating to do that in your own home, but here are some really simple rules. One is scale. Make sure that the seating height is about the same for each chair, couch, bench. You want the interesting design elements of the piece to stand out. You don't want the fact that one thing is overscaled and one thing is underscaled to stand out. When they all feel like they fit in the room that they belong in, then you will notice what's most beautiful about each piece. So just bring a measuring tape, measure your room, measure your walls, measure your rug, and keep that in mind when you're picking out pieces for a particular space. And two, I think that the most important thing is to just pick what you love. And if you love it, no matter where it's from, what color it is, what era it's from, if you love it, it will mix all together because your home is a reflection of who you are. It's not a reflection of what a certain design style is, it's a reflection of who you are. So pick what you love, make sure it's the right size, and blend it together in a way that makes it the most interesting version of what your room could be. It might be intimidating to get into the world of vintage if you've never done so before, but once you find your own vintage style, you can go out into the world, play with it, shop around, bring it into your home, and create a space that's just as unique and beautiful as you are.